Welcome back to the Read Option Podcast. Today, we're talking about Geno Smith's new contract restructure with the Seattle Seahawks, the top 5 young wide receivers in the NFL, and we have a new segment for you that's going to be a part of the show moving forward. Enjoy.
Dalton steps up. It's complete. Remarkable.
Cut back outside right 30, 35, 40, down the far sideline. He's still moving. He's going to go.
Pass is caught. Diggs. Sideline. Touchdown. Unbelievable.
Tommy touchdowns.
And Razorback Jacks here with the second podcast of Read Option Podcast.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah.
We're going to get into this. How was your week?
It was actually pretty interesting. Went down to Texas, watched my Razorbacks play. They kick butt in baseball, so it was a pretty nice weekend.
Yeah, what's his name?
Hagen Smith struck out 17 out of 18 batters. It was a performance for the ages, baby.
That's crazy.
Yep.
Yeah, apparently you've never seen anything like that before.
I have never seen anything like that before.
That must have been really awesome.
It was great.
Especially considering the last time I believe you went to Arkansas, which was not very pleasant.
Yeah, they got knocked out of the Super Regionals by North Carolina State in a game that they never should have lost. But hey, we're not going to think about that.
Yeah. So we're going to jump in here and talk football. We're not going to, stick too much about baseball. That's not really our forte.
Baseball's a problem for future Jack.
Yeah, exactly. So let's talk about our team, Seattle Seahawks. No longer a part of our team, but was once a kind of one of the golden boys of Seattle, for us at least, Mike Davis. He is retiring, unfortunately.
Yep.
He didn't have the greatest career ever, but we will never forget the first place, or at least I will never forget, the first place I saw Mike Davis. It was hilarious. I don't know if you remember this, but preseason, maybe like game 2 or 3. Yep, game 2 or 3. This random running back that we had never seen before just runs a touchdown into the end zone and then grabs the ball and puts it under his head like a pillow to go to sleep. And he just limp, his body just completely goes limp. And we're like, who is that guy? That's hilarious. We'll probably never see him again, but that's hilarious. And then just so happens that he becomes, I think, our second string running back, and maybe even started a few games for us. But
Yep.
He was pretty good, and he was a good third down back. He was pretty clutch, and I liked having him on the team.
I'll tell you what. So he was a good complimentary back to Chris Carson. Back in 2018, Carson gained about 1,100 yards or whatever, but Davis was good for like 700 yards from scrimmage. I think he had like 500 yards rushing, couple hundred yards receiving. He was actually a pretty good player. And he went on to Chicago,
The Bears, yeah.
Carolina. He actually gained 1,000 yards from scrimmage one year with Carolina. I think it was 2019 or 2020.
I think Christian McCaffrey got hurt that year.
Yeah, and he was one of the primary backs there. Went on to play for the Falcons the year after that. Ended up with like 750, 800 yards from scrimmage. So, would catch the ball out of the backfield, was a good third down back, was a serviceable runner. He was a good complimentary back along the way.
Yeah, he was fun.
He was a fun guy.
He was fun.
And putting a baby to sleep, baby.
Putting the baby to sleep. That was so funny. It was hilarious. And we're
Great.
just like, what the heck is this guy doing?
Absolutely one of the cooler end zone celebrations.
Yeah. So one more retirement announcement before we actually jump in for real. Matthew Slater, one of the best, allegedly, one of the best special teams players of all time, according to guys like Bill Belichick and other Patriots. Not someone that we got to watch all that much, and not somebody that you can really put down on paper as like the best of all time based on stats, but widely regarded in the league as the best, potentially the best special teams player ever.
Yeah. So when you added his name to our little hit list here, I have to be honest, I had to look him up. And what I found was absolutely incredible. 10 Pro Bowls this guy made as a gunner. I think he had a couple years, maybe 3 or 4 years, that he actually returned punts and stuff like that. But he was just a gunner, made the Pro Bowl 10 years out of his 16-year career as just a punt coverage guy. So you want to talk about a position where it's really difficult. There aren't many metrics, to govern how good a guy might be in that. You can't necessarily go with yards or, completions or, touchdowns or anything, but 10 Pro Bowls as a special teamer. This guy was outstanding, apparently.
Yeah.
And, I guess I heard his name along the way here and there, but I never got a chance to really watch him all that much. But when I looked at his stats, he brought up another guy that I got to watch play who was cut from the same mold, Steve Tasker.
Yeah.
This guy.
What team? The Bills?
So he was on the Bills for the most of his career and was pretty much the same thing. He was a short guy. He was like 5'9", 5'10", $185, but he was a gunner. And he would go down there and just like kamikaze, he would
Just mash on
he
people.
would take people out. And
That's
you know
awesome.
what? Only 7 Pro Bowls for him, but also much like Slater, had 5 All-Pro nominations as first-team All-Pro.
Damn.
So, these guys, getting recognition from their peers, basically. So the guys that are on the field watching them are, giving them these props. Slater, 16 years in the league as a gunner who's basically just kamikazing down the field. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, for sure.
Got to give him props for a great career.
Yeah. Yeah. And on a team that, seems to breed, I don't know if that's the right word, but seems to bring up these kind of interesting players a lot of the times, who's the guy, Doug Flutie? Is that his name?
Doug Flutie was one of them. Yeah, he was like a 5'1" quarterback.
So like very interesting players, here and there for the Patriots.
But
especially.
also you could see, just kind of thinking about what Belichick values in a player, you could just see him just loving a guy like Slater. Just this guy just doing his job to the best of his ability and just being awesome at it. The little things. It was always the little things, and so many people kind of, I guess, special teams or whatever. Yeah. You know what? Have somebody run back a punt, and you know what? That coach is fired on Belichick's team.
That's true.
The opponent runs back a punt for a touchdown. That's it. You're gone next day.
It's true.
So having a guy like that is right up somebody like Belichick's alley.
Yeah, definitely. New segment. We're going to talk about a little bit here and explain what's going on. We at the Read Option Podcast, we do our research, but for the most part, we are just kind of bullshitting, hanging out, having fun, talking about football. We don't always have the exact numbers in front of us, so we're going to bring in a new segment. What is it? What, would you like to explain the name?
So we're going to call it the Coach's Challenge. It's like throwing a red flag on the field. And basically what we're trying to do is we want to go back and we want to review our previous podcast and kind of fact check some of the topics that we might have maybe not gotten 100% right. So I'm going to give you the first shot at Coach's Challenge from our last podcast. When I said that Gronk broke the record for touchdowns by a tight end with 13.
I'm throwing the challenge
He's
flag
throwing
on that.
Challenge flag.
Challenge flag's coming out.
Yeah. And
Bill Belichick style, where I kind of just drop it on the ground next to the ref.
after further review, the ruling on the field has been overruled. That was 17 and not 13.
Yes, 17 touchdowns for Gronk in a season. Record touchdowns by a tight end. It was not 13. What we believe it was Antonio Gates. No,
I
that
believe
had
that
13.
Antonio Gates and a couple other guys, I believe Eric Ebron had 13 as well.
Ebron, that's digging deep. Oh my gosh, that pulled out a core memory. Ebron was pretty good for a few years.
Yeah, you know what? He had an odd career where he was either really good during the year or he was really not good during the year.
So yeah, 17 touchdowns for Gronk.
Yeah.
Next challenge flag that's probably going to get thrown here in a second. I'm going to guess that it will be thrown here. I made the mistake of saying that Johnny Unitas started in the Super Bowl, threw a touchdown, and then came out due to injury. And let's go to the booth to review. So
what we discovered after a little bit of research is that Johnny Unitas was hurt for a lot of the season before Super Bowl III against the Jets. In fact, Earl Morrall took over for that whole season, had such a good season, he actually won the MVP that year. And even when Unitas was healthy, Don Shula decided to leave in Morrall as the starter. So against the Jets, they're getting their butts kicked in the Super Bowl, and Earl Morrall is just completely ineffective. Shula brings in Johnny Unitas with about 4 minutes left in the third quarter. Unitas leads them to their only touchdown drive of the game. So can you really pin that loss on Johnny Unitas? He only played a quarter and change. Probably not. Yeah. So, but the ironic thing is the Super Bowl that they did win, Super Bowl V against the Cowboys, Johnny Unitas did start that and got knocked out in the second quarter.
Due to injury. And Earl Morrall came in and won them the game.
And led a last-second win against the Cowboys.
I never knew that.
So it was a little bit of interesting history there. The challenge flag, I don't know where we're going to rule on that one, but I just figured
I was wrong, so we'll say that was
so the ruling on
overturned.
The field is overturned.
Yeah. So the last one.
You're going to throw Coach's challenge on.
I'm throwing a challenge flag. This is the last one. Bo Jackson never ran for 1,000 yards. Jackson did not run for 1,000 yards. I don't know what you're talking about. This is malarkey.
That is correct. So I said that Bo Jackson in half a season ran for 1,000 yards. In fact, he played 11 games. He started 9 of them and only ran for 950 yards.
Close enough. Close enough. I don't know.
So
there's not enough to overturn it.
Not enough to overturn it. So the ruling on the field stands.
The angle was not good enough. It was a high angle. We couldn't see where the knee dropped and hit the turf. So
yeah, it was inconclusive. So we couldn't
so we can't
overrule
overturn that. All right, let's move on. Tyler Lockett's one of our favorite players, probably ever. Up there with Steve Largent.
Absolutely.
I would say up there with Russell Wilson, but probably at this point we like him more than Russell Wilson, to be honest.
I do indeed.
Tyler Lockett, unfortunately, is getting a little old, and we need to free up some cap space. We don't have a ton of money on the Seahawks, so do we cut him? Do we restructure his contract? How the hell do we go about doing this? I think Lockett might be the type of guy to say, you know what, I'll restructure my contract or I'll take less money or something like that. But if we cut him, that sucks.
So there's other areas, and we'll get into one of them here in a little bit. There's other areas for them to save a little bit of money this year. We all know that they are right up against the ceiling of the cap this year. One easy way, in my opinion, is to cut Jamal Adams.
Yeah. Otherwise known as burnt toast.
Yeah, I just don't see him being very effective. He had a wonderful season the year that he broke the record for sacks by a defensive back. Really hasn't done anything since then. He's just constant injury. On top of that, he's also off the field shenanigans. He's on Facebook or Twitter. He's doing his thing.
Showing your age. That's right.
Yeah. He's on MySpace.
Jamal Adams is on Facebook.
He's on MySpace.
Posting a new status about how he hates the millennials.
But so you could save money there. Additionally, and we'll talk about this in a little bit, Geno restructuring his contract a little bit to save somewhat on the cap space for at least this year.
Yes, not so much next year.
No, next year they're going to get crushed, but we'll talk about that. Back to the Tyler Lockett thing. So Grubb, coming in from Washington, had 3 stud receivers over there, widely regarded as all 3 potentially going pro in this upcoming year's draft. Lockett, having been a fan favorite for so many years there. Additionally, after the top 3, you really have a major fall off in talent. You're falling down to Bobo. And as much as I love Bobo, give me more Bobo. Give me more Bobo. He's not going to fill the role as your number 3 receiver.
And definitely not the role of Lockett, unfortunately.
Exactly. So, yes, did he have a rough year? Absolutely. But I think all around our offense had a terrible year. Quite honestly, we really did not. I think our scheme was terrible. I think our offensive line in addition to the injuries, I think just didn't block well. You look at the stats for Ken Walker from 22 to 23, they're way down. You look at the stats for Geno Smith, they're way down.
Way down.
You look at the stats for Lockett, they're way down. The only one that really kind of balled out was DK Metcalf.
True.
JSN had a decent
He had
season.
flashes, but up
he
until
had
like
flashes.
week 10 or 11, I don't quote me on this, but he had like 10 catches.
Yeah.
That was it.
And he had like 10 catches for like 11 yards.
Yeah,
Like
it was bad.
Every pass was at the line of scrimmage. So I am hoping that they kind of pull what they did with Bobby Wagner this year. Everybody loves you in this clubhouse. Everybody loves you in the stands. Will you work with us to and they really, let's face it, they really need him for their offense to keep going, because I just don't think JSN is quite ready to fill that number 2 role yet. And even if Lockett fills only the number 3 role, I'd love to have a number 3 guy with, 75 or 80 catches for 900 yards and 6 touchdowns.
Yeah.
That's perfect.
Now, I don't know if Geno Smith is going to put up numbers to make that happen, but, even 60 catches for, 650, 700 yards or something like that, that's still solid.
Sure. But even I'm hoping that Lockett looks at himself in the mirror and says, I want to retire as a Seahawk. I know I've only got 2, 3, 4 years, of being a quality receiver left. And, what my feeling is, if he doesn't restructure his contract and maybe take less money with the Seahawks, he's going to get cut. And then how much money he's going to make from any other team. So you might as well stay in a place that you're not only comfortable with, familiar with, you're also loved and widely regarded as a folk hero.
Yes,
So
unless
you
the
might as
Chiefs
well
pick him up,
stick
of
around.
course, and then he goes and wins 4 Super Bowls.
I guess that could happen, but there's no telling. I mean, are they going to pay him any more than the Seahawks might pay him?
And and maybe Lockett's willing to take less money to go win another chip or something like that. But who
He
really knows? He
doesn't
seem
strike
like
me as that type, but who knows how it's going to work? You know?
It's still a business.
Still a business, absolutely.
Speaking of what we were just talking about, Geno Smith, his contract, is being restructured or already has been restructured.
Yep.
It looks like we are saving a pretty decent amount of money, $4.8 million in cap space.
Yep.
The restructure is basically $9.6 million signing bonus being spread out evenly over the next 2 seasons.
Right.
So instead of all this money hitting us now, we are restructuring so that it hits us, unfortunately, next year. So we're going to have to figure out what to do next year, because I believe his cap hit for next year is like $35 million.
38.5.
38.5. So that's a lot more than what is it now this year? So 23 or something like that.
Correct. Yep.
So that's not going to be fun in 2025, but to restructure a contract like that and have a guy just be willing to do that is nice. It's helpful to the now. We have a good roster now. Let's try to go out and win now.
Correct.
So are we going to do that with Geno Smith? Does he have the talent to do it? Not really sure, but to add that extra cap space, put some defensive players around him, and maybe have more of a dominant defense. Maybe you won't have to do as much work to win a Super Bowl if he has some key players around him.
Agreed. And also, what that tells me is that if they're punting this, they're kicking the can down the road a little bit. What that tells me is that they're not sold on Geno for next year.
No.
So, for Geno to do that, he's taking a little bit of money up front, deferring some money for next year, but it kind of tells me that Schneider's not sold on, because are you going to pay Geno Smith $40 million a year, almost $40 million a year next year?
Yeah.
If he comes up with, 45 touchdowns and 4,500 yards, I might think about it, but I'm just not feeling that I think they're kind of sort of, okay, let's get the new coaching staff a year under their belt with a seasoned veteran. So we pretty much have a ready-made offense ready to go.
Yeah.
Our quarterback's ready to go. Our 2 running backs are ready to go. Our 3 receivers are ready to go.
Hopefully our offensive line might be ready to go.
If they stay healthy, our line should be okay if they stay healthy.
Yep.
So we have a ready-made offense, in my opinion. And so maybe either they're looking to maybe pick up a quarterback in the draft and see what happens, or potentially draft a quarterback next year. I don't know who's coming available as a free agent as a quarterback next year, but I have a feeling that they don't want too many changes. And right now we have the entire coaching staff that is brand new.
Completely brand new.
And not only brand new, but every single person on the offensive side of the ball is brand new in their position, if not brand new in the NFL.
Yeah.
So even the people in the NFL have never had the position that they currently have with the Seahawks.
Like Grubb.
Like Grubb, but he doesn't have any NFL experience.
That's what I mean. So, yeah. So like you said, if any experience at all,
so
he's got none.
I think what they're trying to do is say, okay, let's leave the pieces in place.
At least our players are comfortable.
Our players.
Maybe our coaches aren't comfortable yet, but at least our players are comfortable.
Yeah. So that's kind of what I think that they're thinking, from a monetary and a practical standpoint.
And on top of that, restructuring his contract makes him a little bit more enticing to other teams if they want to trade him, because then they can, because the contract isn't going to be as big, they're not going to have to take over that, a huge contract. Potentially, that's at least what I've been reading. Sometimes when you restructure your contract like that, other teams might jump at that and say like, oh, they gave him the $9.2 million signing bonus up front. Now we can take over his contract. It's a little bit less for us.
And that's an interesting point, because if they think they could get through this season with Drew Lock, and certainly I think they have to sign Drew Lock first, because we have a bunch of free agents, especially on the defensive side of the ball, but Drew Lock on the offensive side of the ball, if they restructure his contract and they think they can trade Geno Smith and get by with Drew Lock while they kind of look for somebody in the draft, or try and maybe pick somebody up, in a trade, or, something else, that's a possibility as well.
Yeah, but I think that's the last on the priority list, because in my opinion, I don't see Drew Lock doing anything close to what Geno. I mean, he had a really solid game against the Eagles.
He did,
but I think that might have been some not hype, but like adrenaline rush, and like he was just in the zone. And I don't know if he's doing that every game. I certainly don't think he's going to do what Geno Smith did in 2022.
Right. Agreed.
So I don't really see them going that direction, to be honest.
But again, if our defense makes any improvement,
we'll be solid.
Any improvement, we could be a 10-7 team, instead of a 9-8 team, in which case we make the playoffs.
This is true.
Yeah.
So I just Geno's good. I guess I'll predict that Geno has a better season than he did last year, this upcoming year, if he is the quarterback for Seattle, but not quite as good as his 2022 season, which I think was just like, it was outlandish.
I think he
compared
peaked.
to what
I think that was his peak.
He peaked, yeah.
But I also think with the new, so in my opinion, it could go one of two ways. You got a brand new coaching staff that doesn't have any idea what it's like to play against an NFL defense.
At least some of the pieces,
your offensive coordinator.
Oh, yeah.
And so you might be coming in with these, with stuff that worked like crazy in college, because everybody, the fastest guy is running a 4.6.
Yeah. And
now you got linebackers that are running 4.3s, and you think all these gimmicky plays are going to work, and you get crushed.
Yeah.
It's happened. In fact, it has happened with almost every single offensive coordinator that has come from the college ranks to the pros.
Yeah.
Is that they haven't panned out.
Yep.
So,
unfortunately,
either he's going to come in and be a breath of fresh air, because quite honestly, we were very frustrated with our offensive play calling last year, whether that was Pete Carroll's touch or whether Waldron was just way too conservative. But 4th and 1 from your opponent's 40-yard line every single time, and we would take the 5-yard penalty and punt. It was just, we never, ever went for it, unless the game was on the line. But, we never tried to push the envelope at all.
No. And a third of the teams in the NFL are going for that. Like other teams.
A third of the teams in the NFL are going for 4th and 1.
That's what I'm saying.
I mean,
they're going for that.
So they're going for 4th and 1, and we're having trouble converting on like 3rd and 1. And then we know if we don't get it,
so when other teams are doing it, that's kind of the meta now, is like you're going for it on 4th down in your opponent's territory. All the good teams are doing that. Mm-hmm. Why the hell are you not doing that?
Correct.
You guys are just kind of weenies.
I understand. Look, if it's 3rd and 1 and you're going against the Niners and you're on the your own 30-yard line, I'm not saying to go for it, but we were consistently on the other side of the field, just out of Myers' field goal range, and we're sending the punt units, you know, and what was even worse is like when we did line up for it, it was like we weren't trying to run a play,
or we weren't.
No, we were just trying to draw them offside.
True.
That was it. We
That's
draw them
another
offside
one,
and then take the 5-yard penalty and then punt.
Yeah, and then punt.
So I'm hoping that they come in with a breath of fresh air and maybe add a little bit of diversity to this offense. Can we run a freaking wide receiver screen? Can we run a jet sweep?
Can we run a screen with more than one blocker?
Yeah, exactly.
and not DK Metcalf, who just lets the guy run past him anyways. And you're the biggest guy in the field and you just let him run past you. Yeah, that's just crazy.
So that's kind of a good segue.
Yeah, good segue.
Actually.
Speaking of DK Metcalf, I had this idea. DK Metcalf, we've watched him multiple times run people over and sometimes even off balance. The guy who has the leverage has fallen down and DK stays planted. I don't remember who it was, but I think it was against the Niners. He ran a slant route and caught the ball, took one step. The guy just should have leveled him and just falls down, and DK stays planted perfectly on 2 feet like nothing, like a brick wall, basically.
Yep.
So that got me thinking, Cam Chancellor, probably top 10 hitter in NFL history. Top 10, just will mash you and knock you unconscious and freaking just destroy you.
Yep.
So what happens then if you take an immovable object and meet it with an unstoppable force and DK Metcalf gets clobbered by Cam Chancellor? Who comes out on top of that? Who stays standing when they collide?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. So I did a little bit of research on this one.
Did you?
Cam Chancellor, 6'3", 225, but only ran a 4.7 40-yard dash. All right? Only 4.7.
Oh, my God. I know where this is going.
DK Metcalf, 6'4", 235. So he's got an inch and 10 pounds and runs a 4.33.
4.33.
Okay.
He's a freaking animal.
Okay. So in physics, force equals mass times acceleration.
Yep.
So if you lined them up both at opposite end zones, right? The goal line of opposite end zones, and had them hit each other, run
at the 50
fast as they could. Now, unfortunately, because
they
DK
wouldn't,
is
they wouldn't
faster,
make it to the 50. They would make it. Yeah, DK would make it to
would
the
be
other
on
40
the other
or something.
45.
Yeah.
DK's got to win that because force, because he's got more mass and more velocity, more acceleration.
However,
Now,
Cam Chancellor almost killed Vernon Davis, who's a tight end.
Right.
He might be as big as DK Metcalf,
True.
maybe a little bigger even.
So a lot of other things go into that.
Sure.
So technique, Cam Chancellor, one of the best tacklers that I've ever seen, other than just being a hitter, was an excellent tackler.
Yep.
DK being taller, who also runs upright, does Chancellor get leverage on him? Does he hit him low?
Yeah.
So that'd be an interesting collision, I'll tell you. It would definitely be like two freight trains running into each other on opposite sides of the track,
One day we're going to see an explosion in the distance and no one's going to really know what happened except for Cam Chancellor and DK Metcalf. And we're all just going to be blown out of proportion. It's going to be like the Ice Age. We're just all going to explode and the population's going to go away and we're going to have to repopulate the
That will
the
be the Big Bang right there.
Yeah, that's the Big Bang. Speaking of what?
So we've really focused on
Seattle.
Nothing but the Seahawks so far.
We'll continue to talk about Seattle for one more segment.
Okay.
Xavier Howard, we'll just touch on it quickly. He got cut by the Dolphins, and from what I know, he's pretty good.
He is. I'm going to tell you though, my thought is this: I don't think McDonald's going to get wild and crazy because I think so. You had Tariq Woolen made the Pro Bowl 2 years ago, and almost won the Defensive Rookie of the Year. Then you had
a down season this past year though.
Yeah, absolutely. But let's face it. Again, we thought our defensive coaching was just atrocious.
That's true. That's true.
Atrocious.
That's true.
So when you suddenly forget how to tackle and you suddenly forget how to cover, to me, that speaks more to coaching and scheme than it does to talent or effort.
That's fair.
So, and then you put Devin Witherspoon on the other side,
who's really good.
who also almost won defensive rookie of the year.
True.
In my opinion, if you get the right coach in there, and I am hoping and praying that Mr. McDonald is the right coach, you could, in theory, have two bookend cornerbacks for the next
bring back
8 years or whatever.
You bring back the Richard Sherman, Brandon Browner dynamic,
Sure,
basically.
sure. At this point, I'm not willing to give up on Woolen because he had such a great first season.
That's fair.
And so I don't think you go out. So if anything, maybe you go out and maybe you try and pick up a safety, maybe one of the safeties from the Ravens that's a free agent.
Yeah, to replace Adams.
To replace Adams, you got Julian Love in there. Quandre Diggs is getting a little older. Yeah.
Unfortunate because I loved Quandre
2 years
Diggs.
ago. Agreed. He made the Pro Bowl 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Last year was just not very good.
No, not as good as usual.
So I think if you were, as much as I'm intrigued by that, I think McDonald's going to be like, I'm going to play especially those two guys. I'm going to keep these two guys. I know I got one stud, and I'm pretty sure I can get the other stud back to where he was. Sure. You know,
okay. That's a good take, actually.
That's my thought.
Honestly, we might end up having to pay Howard more than we want to.
Oh, sure. And think about it. Woolen and
he's going to be asking for money.
Woolen and Spoon are both on their rookie contracts. So,
we're chilling for now.
You could be paying two dynamic top tier cornerbacks on their rookie contracts for the next 2 or 3 years.
That is true. Yeah. So money. We'll keep talking about money here for a little while. Dak Prescott is looking to ask for a lot of freaking money. And just so happens that, I mean, maybe not just so happens because usually the cap goes up every year, but Dak is looking for like 60 mil a year, which is poopy preposterous.
So I don't know if he's looking for that kind of money. He might be looking for that kind of money. I know that his cap hit this year. So his contract averaged, I think, $35 or $38 million a year over the course of the contract.
Yeah.
I think he's scheduled to make $34 million this year, but his cap hit is like going to be close to 60.
Yeah.
I did some research on this, and it confused the living crap out of me.
Of course it did, because the cap in the NFL is just just confusing by default.
So, but not only the cap, but it's also the way that they
structure the contract.
These contracts. So we were just talking about Geno Smith. They're taking money from this year and they're moving it to next year, but with no guarantee that this guy's going to be on the team next year.
Yep.
So they're punting money down the road that they may never have to pay Geno.
So what you're saying is they punted some money down the road back in the day with Dak, and now they're paying for it at this point.
It seems that way. And it was really confusing to me, and I didn't want to spend too much time because I was kind of getting wrapped around the axle. But you have you have the cap number and the actual salary, and it's adjusted for stuff like roster bonus, and also signing bonus, which is what Geno Smith's thing was.
Yep.
If he was on the roster March 13th or February,
this past,
when
they let it slide so he could make the money.
But then they punted that money down the road, and it just gets so confusing.
Yeah.
So I don't know if Dak is asking for 60 or whether his cap hit is 60.
Well, the article title was Dak Prescott to reset market with Dallas Cowboys at $60 million. So there might be rumors that he's going to be asking for 60 million. I wouldn't be completely surprised, just because when the cap goes up, people start asking for more money.
Of course.
So
absolutely.
I want to be the highest paid in the NFL in all time.
Sure.
And things like this always bring me back to this recurring conversation that we have all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Why is Tom Brady part of the reason why Tom Brady has 7 Super Bowl wins is because he deferred a lot of the money that he should have made to guys that could surround him and be talented and help him win. Give the guys, and I was watching a video that the NFL produced about the NFL cap space, and they were intentional about saying, they even got a guy, I don't remember who it was, but I think he was a part of the Patriots coaching system maybe, or maybe it was his agent, I'm not sure. But he even said, Tom came to me and said, if I take less money, can you distribute it to the guys around? Like, are you and Belichick going to distribute it to the guys around me so that we can get a winning team? Tom Brady was adamant about taking less money. And sure, he was still like one of the highest paid quarterbacks in the league every year, but not the number one paid quarterback. He would take $10, $15 million less and disperse it around his team. How is it that these quarterbacks don't get it? They're not doing it. No one else in history has done it, apparently, except for Tom Brady. And he's the only guy with 7.
Well,
he's the only guy with 3+ or 5+ rather.
I don't know the exact answer to that, but my gut feeling is that nobody in the history of football wanted to win Super Bowls more than Tom Brady did.
This is true.
Take a guy like Russell Wilson, take a guy like Aaron Rodgers, okay? They were willing to have nobody around them in order to take as much money as they could.
And then
Russell Wilson ran himself out of Seattle because he basically broke the bank. There wasn't enough money to keep a lot of the Legion of Boom around because he took all the money that there was in the coffer. And then he was wondering why they couldn't put an offensive line in front of him.
So how do you wonder that? Like Aaron Rodgers bitching and moaning all the time about at Mike McCarthy, you're a bad coach. You don't put guys around me. Dude, you took $35 million and gave it all to yourself.
Sure.
You want a receiver? Like you want somebody that's not named Christian Watson or Marquez Valdez-Scantling.
Equanimous
St. Brown. You want a good receiver. You want to go and get Devontae Adams back. You know, like you need money for him. That's why he went to a different team.
Yep, I agree. And, you know, you look at Russell Wilson and they couldn't put a line in front of him. I mean, they tried, but they really didn't have a whole lot to work with there after that, you know?
Yeah, because you're trying to scrape by paying Dwayne Brown, and that's the only guy you can put on your line
you're
that's
picking
worth
a bunch
anything.
of guys up on 1 year.
Jermaine Ifedi.
1 year show me contracts, you know? Who was the, I can't remember the one guy's name they picked up from the Jaguars. They gave him $8 million for 1 year, Jokel. His name was Jokel,
yes,
and he was a joke.
He was a joke.
But that's what they tried. They tried to piecemeal this line in front of Russell Wilson the last 3 or 4 years he was there, and he was running for his life. But hey, you know, you're spending your $9 gazillion. Okay,
you can't just ask your wife for some money, dude. Like she's got buku bucks.
And so yes, Tom Brady, you know, his children's children are set.
Sure.
You know, because you have between, Giselle and him were making, billions of dollars every year. And the same with Wilson and Ciara.
Yep.
But, so you're right. You just, okay, I'm only going to be in this league for, say, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, whatever it was. I'm going to break the bank because if I blow my ACL out or somebody shatters my ankle and I never get to play again,
I'll be set.
I'll be set. So you take the money and you run.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but it kind of, that's the way it goes right now.
You know what? And Dak Prescott has been a really good statistic quarterback for quite a bit of years now.
Sure.
He puts up
not so much anymore, but
puts up good numbers every year. I mean, you look at his stats last year; they were phenomenal.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's fair, but stat padding a little bit, but not crazy.
I mean, stat padding. They won what? 12 games, 13 games, or whatever.
That's fair.
But unfortunately, Dak can't do it really in the playoffs.
In the playoffs, that is fair. That is fair. All right, so let me throw some numbers at you here. I'm going to throw a little curveball into the episode. I'm going to read some numbers to you. Playoffs, 2 different quarterbacks. One has a 4-2 record. One has a 2-4 record. 58% completion, 1,374 yards, 7 touchdowns, 5 INTs. Rushing, 500 yards, 4 touchdowns, 4 fumbles, 1 lost fumble. The other guy, 57% completion, 1,324 yards, 6 touchdowns. Rushing, 521 yards, 3 touchdowns, 6 fumbles, and 3 fumbles lost. So you got one guy, I mean, fairly similar stats. Fairly similar.
Very similar.
Few more lost fumbles on one side than the other. Player number 1, Lamar Jackson, 2-4 in the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
Player number 2,
Cam Newton.
nope.
Oh.
Colin Kaepernick.
Colin Kaepernick. Interesting.
Believe it or not, Colin Kaepernick was a pretty good playoff quarterback. He was a pretty good quarterback.
Well, they did go to the Super Bowl.
They went to the Super Bowl.
So he had to win at least
Barely lost the
3
Super
games, or
Bowl,
at least
if I
2
remember
games.
correctly. Barely lost.
Yeah.
And put up freaking good numbers. He also had a few really good seasons, honestly, rushing especially.
Yep.
But freaking Lamar Jackson, man.
Yep.
Another one that just seems to not be able to get it done in the playoffs.
Well,
in the
as we
big games.
discussed last podcast,
Sure, coaching.
They in my opinion, they were the best team in the AFC.
Yeah.
And their offensive coordinator just
Through the game.
pull the head scratcher
Yeah.
of the year.
Now Jackson didn't really I don't remember him playing all that well though.
No, but again, like I said, you can't make him drop back 40 times in a game.
He's not Pat Mahomes.
That's not his game.
This is true.
You know,
Yeah, he run first.
he thrives
run
off
first.
so play action. He thrives off the play action. But when he's taking shotgun snaps 20 out of the 40 times or whatever, probably not running. I mean, maybe he's running, but even then, he didn't run very much that game either.
No,
it was just a terribly orchestrated offensive scheme.
Yeah, Jackson, we're gonna need to see over the course of his career how he pans out. He could pan out to be one of the best ever. He's got 2 MVPs already.
Yep.
He could pan out to be a Tony Romo type of guy. Unfortunately, puts up great stats during the season, and then just can't figure it out in the playoffs because of guys like Mahomes that are beating him, or the guys like Josh Allen.
Well, let's remember too. Other than himself, he doesn't have a whole lot of weapons around him on offense.
This is true. Yeah.
He really never has.
This is true. He's got Mark Andrews, who's really good,
but
he doesn't.
He's
have,
not Travis Kelce.
He's not Travis Kelce, and he doesn't have a Tyreek Hill or a Jamar Chase.
He never
that
has.
He's thrown to.
That's right.
And for a guy that's
doesn't have a Stephon Diggs.
No. And for a guy that's a better passer than people give him credit for, he would benefit tremendously from a guy that could
from a number one wide receiver. No question.
And Hollywood Brown was not that.
No, he would have been a great second guy. He would have been a great compliment to somebody. Sure. And Odell just, clearly a shadow of his former self. It just wasn't there.
So wide receivers, we'll keep talking about some wide receivers then.
I like the way we segue into these topics here. Yeah. We've done a good job kind of leading one into the other.
Agreed. We are a good podcast. Watch us. Listen to us.
I'm looking at the wrong camera.
We do good. So let's say Lamar Jackson gets, we'll talk about who they are, but let's say Lamar Jackson gets one of these 5 receivers that we're about to talk about. His game goes way up, in my opinion.
Oh, without question.
Without question. So there seems to be 5 there's a consensus that there are 5 young stud receivers in the league. That's Jefferson, Chase, Lamb, Amon-Ra, St. Brown, and Puka Nacua. In what order do you believe they should be ranked for the rest of their careers? Let's not say, I'm going to change this up a little bit.
Yep.
Let's not say for the rest of their careers. Where do you think they should be ranked right now?
So, I'm going to take Puka, and I'm actually going to remove him from the conversation.
So I put him at number 5, and the reason was because he had one unbelievable season, but that's all you have to go off of, and his number 1 receiver was hurt.
Correct. And that's why now another guy who caught 100 passes his rookie year, Anquan Bolden, ended up in the top 25 all-time of receptions. Nacua might be there when he's done. And the guys on this list don't have a whole lot more of a track record than he does. But they do have more of a track record than he does.
And they have a track record of being the bona fide number 1 on their team without somebody having to be injured in order for them to put those numbers up.
Correct.
So are you going from 5 to 1? Is that how you're doing it?
Well, I'm actually going to replace Nacua with a guy that only has one more year than
Then Puka?
CeeDee Lamb.
Oh, then Lamb.
And that's going to be A.J. Brown.
A.J. Brown's a sleeper.
He's only 25 or 26, has already had 4 out of his 5 seasons over 1,000 yards, 2 of those seasons with almost 1,500 yards, and double-digit touchdowns 3 out of his 5 years. So I'm going to replace Nacua only because he's a question mark in my book.
Yeah, okay, that's fair. The only reason I would say maybe that doesn't fit is because if he's been in the league for 5 years, he's not technically at this point like a young receiver. But I'll give it to you.
True
So you're
statement.
putting
That's
him,
why I kind of
are you putting him at number 5?
kind of borderline. I don't think I'm capable of ranking these guys because I look through their stats.
Oh, yeah.
And each one of them has done amazing things. So Amon-Ra, I want to put him 4th, but he has so many stinking catches.
Oh, he's so good.
The
He's
only
so good.
thing he has that's just one notch below everybody else is his touchdowns per season.
Sure.
So he's averaging like 7 touchdowns per season, and all the other guys are averaging like between 8, 9, and I think it's either Chase or Lamb is averaging like almost 10.
Yeah.
But they're all you can look at them. Every one of them has started out their rookie season dominating.
Sure. I don't know. Did Amon-Ra dominate or he was solid?
He was solid.
He was solid.
And then each one of them went up from there.
Yes, that's true.
And so they either started out really, really good or solid and then went to really, really good and then went to stud. True. Like within the 3rd year. And by stud, I'm talking 110, 1,500 yards, double-digit touchdowns. I mean,
True.
I can't.
So did you
these
rank them
guys.
at all, or no?
I can't rank.
So
them.
I ranked them. I'll give you my rankings and see how you.
I won't
feel
even be
about
able
them.
to argue because
Sure, because you put any of them in any slot and they're good to go. But this is my rankings and these are the reasoning. This is the reasoning behind each ranking. I put Jefferson at number 1. I feel like talent-wise, just passing the eye test, like Jefferson is the number 1 receiver in the league. He does things that no one else can do. 68 catches for 1,000 yards in 10 games.
Yeah, with getting hurt.
Getting hurt.
Yeah.
CeeDee Lamb, I put at number 2, especially after this last season.
He went bonkers.
Proved he's the number 2 in league this past year. He had a ridiculous season.
Went ballistic.
And kind of also pushed him over that hump of like, is he really a number 1? Oh, dude, he's a number 1 and he's like insane. He's an insane number 1.
Yeah.
So CeeDee Lamb number 2. Jamar Chase is going to be number 3. Still had 100 catches for 1,200 yards and 7 touchdowns without Burrow.
Without
Burrow. So still had a crazy season without his stud quarterback.
And also sharing targets with T. Higgins, who is one of the better number 2 receivers in the league.
They might be one of the best duos.
Yeah.
They are probably one of the best duos in the league.
And you could throw Tyler Boyd in there as your number 3.
Yeah.
And that's
who used to be your number 2 back in the day.
So he's got a lot of mouths to feed over there.
Yep. Amon-Ra, I think he solidified himself as the top 5 wide receiver this year. He had a massive season.
Yeah, he did.
Freaking over 100 catches. I don't remember exactly how many, but well over 100 catches, I believe.
Yep.
And then Puka, unfortunately.
Only because he doesn't have the track record.
Only because he doesn't have the track record, not enough years in the league, and only 6 touchdowns, but super, super promising.
Yeah, so if Cooper Kupp comes back healthy, is he playing second fiddle to Cooper Kupp? And Cooper's, 110 catches,
Yes.
Or are you going to have 2 guys with 110 catches,
Or does Puka end up going to another team, like the Ravens, being the number 1 guy and just smoking people?
Yeah, well, first of all, the Rams are not getting rid of Puka yet.
No, but at some point in his career is what I mean.
Sure.
If he ever, they're like, we got Cooper Kupp, we want to get some value. Nacua's fantastic and we want to, trade him for a first rounder or like a solid defensive player. Let's give him to somebody else. If he goes to a team that needs a number 1 wide receiver, I see him being a bona fide number 1 wide receiver because he's got the routes and he's got great hands. He looks solid. The eye test, he's really good.
And much like I said about Kelsey last podcast, is that this year, and it was so weird, there were games that Puka was uncoverable.
He
He
looked
was a rookie.
he
and he
looked
was
a lot like
uncoverable.
he looked a lot like Cooper Kupp in his
Yes.
in the sense that he was uncoverable.
Uncoverable.
Where you're like, how is Cooper Kupp open that frequently?
Yeah.
Like what the hell?
And not
Just
only
triple
that,
team him.
that wide open. Not even like, oh, he made a contested catch and Stafford put the ball like right where it needed to be. But like, there was nobody else in the TV screen. I have a 60-inch TV screen. There was nobody else in it.
Yeah, dude.
So now my question about Puka, and this is one thing about the track record. So he went off last year as kind of an unknown quantity, right?
What was he, a 5th round pick?
He was a low round. He didn't come out of college as a number one draft pick, right?
No.
So maybe there wasn't a whole lot of film on him. Maybe he snuck up on some
For
teams.
17 games?
I get that.
Oh my God.
But
Breaking the record.
Let's see if that
Continues.
translates, now that people kind of know what type of game he plays.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I guess that's
I'm
a
not
little
saying
bit.
he won't. I'm just saying let's see if it happens.
Sure. That's a little bit less likely than somebody like a quarterback who comes out of college, nobody knows his game, then you watch film on him and you learn his tendencies. With wide receivers, it's kind of like, beat me, dude. It's not like, oh, I read this guy and my tendency is to throw down here. It's like, beat me for the most part.
Yep.
I'm sure there's guys that watch film, the cornerbacks that watch film to learn
Sure.
how to beat other wide receivers. But for the most part, it's more so a quarterback thing.
Don't forget, he got to play the Seahawks twice last year. So
And
out of his
destroyed us.
105 catches, probably 30 right there.
That's true.
So
You might be actually right,
Just
dude.
saying,
You're not far
because I
off.
think he had 17 or something the
Oh my
first game
God,
he played
dude.
us, right?
Yeah, and we were like, who the hell is this Brando?
Yeah, exactly.
All right, let's dive into something else here. Dolphins legend Dan Marino lists his greatest NFL quarterbacks of all time. Not really surprising his list, but specifically in the title, one surprising name makes the cut. So Brady, Montana, Elway, Mahomes, pretty obvious ones in there, right?
Yep.
Kelly.
So Jim Kelly was an interesting ad by Marino, and I'm thinking that maybe there was a little bit of
Bias.
familiarity.
They're friends.
Or relative bias because he played his whole career, Jim Kelly, and they were in the same division.
Sure.
So he saw him twice a year for almost his whole career. I think Marino came out in 83 and Kelly came out in 86. And then I think they both played until 2000 something or other.
Yeah, 99 or 98.
It was something like that. But so maybe there was a little bit of that familiarity bias.
And also, if I remember correctly from my research, they were good friends and are good friends.
So it's certainly possible that there was kind of that
Little bit of bias.
name that he just kind of threw out there. So I looked at Kelly's stats, and they were good for his career, not great. What was great was 4 Super Bowls in a row. That's
true.
never been done. But there was also something in doing the research that, and I kind of knew it because I got to watch him growing up, and just going to 4 Super Bowls. You and the last one, you just felt bad for the guy because you really just wanted him to win one.
Hell,
because
the third one you felt bad for him.
yeah, but he was so good. He wasn't great, but he was really good. He was a gamer. He was classy. He was a bona fide leader. And so all of that rolled up probably makes up for maybe what some of his stats don't necessarily say. Yeah, don't necessarily show. So Kelly was a heck of a good player. And I think he's in the Hall of Fame. His numbers don't suggest it, but maybe the intangibles do.
And Dan Marino probably would be one of those guys that could see
That knew
the intangibles better than
about the
two guys
intangibles,
sitting on a
yeah.
couch talking about football.
Yeah.
He was one of the best quarterbacks ever.
Agreed.
Played the game
Agreed.
for many
Now,
years.
you put guys up there like Drew Brees and Peyton Manning and Aaron Rodgers just for stats, they destroy Kelly,
Sure.
blow him away.
But the eye test,
Yeah.
maybe Marino knows something we don't.
He was a great leader, and he was just fearless on the field too. I mean, a lot like Aaron Rodgers, fearless. He would try any throw. He wasn't necessarily a gunslinger like maybe Brett Favre was, right?
Sure.
Brett Favre was like, oh, he's triple covered. I'm gonna see if I could throw it in there anyway.
I'm gonna see if I could break the record for picks all time. I want to break one record, so
yeah. I mean, putting Jim Kelly up there statistic wise, you just can't do it.
Yeah.
But damn.
But maybe Marino means something
Super
different.
Bowls, man.
True.
Wow.
Yeah.
In a row.
And this has been thrown around a lot, but it's controversial that wins and losses are a quarterback stat because it's a team game. It is a team game.
Sure.
Who says that it was Jim Kelly that lost them the Super Bowl? I didn't watch any of them, but man, like you go to 4 of them, there's got to be something there.
Yep.
So
exactly.
There's.
But I would
pros
say,
and cons to both
I would
sides.
say if you throwing this out there, which one of these is not like the other? Jim Kelly doesn't necessarily belong. Now, Elway is a different story. Elway did get his 2 Super Bowls at the very end of his career because he happened to play with a guy by the name of Terrell Davis, who gave him what he never had before in all of his playoff career, and that was a running game.
And not just a running game.
No, a
Potentially
bona fide
the running game.
A bona fide running game. Now, I looked up Elway's stats. Do you know Elway never threw for 30 touchdowns in a season? He played for almost 20 years. He never threw for 30 touchdowns in a season and only threw for 4,000 yards once. So everybody thinks Elway. Now, what Elway was very much like Brady. For a lot of his career, Elway just refused to lose. And the only time he did lose was in the Super Bowl. But he also was a scrambler like Pat Mahomes. He would run for 40 yards. He'd run 5 times, and every one of them would be a critical 3rd down to keep a drive alive to go win a game.
He was a gamer.
He was a total gamer. I hated him. I got to watch him because that was he played back when the Seahawks were actually in the AFC West.
The AFC, yeah.
And I got to see him play twice a year, and he owned us. Absolutely owned us, except in the playoffs. We beat him in the playoffs. But
with who?
Maybe Dave Craig. But he was a total gamer. But again, the stats back then were different than the stats now. It wasn't all about touchdowns and yards and stuff like that.
And Marino was the only one doing it like that.
And you and I, maybe next podcast, we'll break down Dan Marino's game and why I think he was so great, because he was putting up numbers.
Pat Mahomes numbers back then.
35 years ago, 40 years ago. Yeah.
It's true.
So, yep.
All right. So we'll stay on the topic of all-time greats for a minute before we jump into our last segment. I just wanted to know what your take on this was. Aaron Donald or Lawrence Taylor, who you taking? Straight up, and they're different positions. Let's just get that out there right now. They're different positions, but equally dominant at their positions and technically have the same job, kill the quarterback.
So when I initially looked at this a week ago, my initial instinct was Lawrence Taylor without question.
All the way. Yeah, I feel like most people would say
Lawrence Taylor all the way. In fact, on my way back from Arkansas, I got to stop at my parents' house and I talked to my stepdad, and who's a Giants fan for the last 147 years. And he said, without question, Lawrence Taylor. Now, he's a Giants fan. He went to like 2 or 3 of the Giants Super Bowls. But then I broke down, again, some of the stats. And let me just throw this out there. I don't want to bore you with all this kind of stuff.
No, I want to hear this.
But I didn't realize how
dominant
Aaron Donald was.
Which is crazy to say,
yes,
because we do realize how dominant he was, and yet we still don't.
So I did Lawrence Taylor's stats first, and I wrote them all down. I got them, copied them all down, and then I did Aaron Donald's, and they are identical.
Really?
Watch this. So, and I'll give you my final take at the end of all this. Lawrence Taylor, 7 straight seasons with double-digit sacks. 1 with 20.5 sacks, which set the record at the time. Defensive Player of the Year 3 times, Defensive Rookie of the Year. All-Pro First Team 8 times, and Second Team twice.
Goddamn.
Aaron Donald, 6 out of 7 seasons with double-digit sacks. So he didn't have that 7th in a row. Only had 8 that year. All-Pro 8 times, just like All-Pro First Team, just like Lawrence Taylor. Pro Bowl 10 times, just like Lawrence Taylor. Defense Player of the Year 3 times, just like Lawrence Taylor.
Oh my God.
Defensive Rookie of the Year, just like Lawrence Taylor. Also had 20.5 sacks in one season, just like Lawrence Taylor. Wow.
Yeah, that's pretty nuts. And this is a guy who
Damn.
plays the inside of the line and he's not an edge rusher.
Yeah, exactly.
To get to the quarterback like that when you're smushed between everybody
and triple teamed
and
every
triple
play.
teamed is nuts.
Yes. So I'm going to give you one pro and one con about them.
Each of them?
Yes.
Okay.
Lawrence Taylor's the defenses that Lawrence Taylor played on, I think, were more dominating than the Rams, which means that Lawrence Taylor may have had more opportunity to kind of run free because he was playing with the likes of Carl Banks and Harry Carson. He was playing with guys on the line that ended up going to the Hall of Fame. I think overall, Lawrence Taylor's defenses were more dominating, and so therefore maybe he had less double teams maybe to contend with.
That's fair. Yeah.
Aaron Donald, on the other hand, there have been any number of interior linemen, like say Reggie White, who were maybe just as good, maybe not. My thing about Lawrence Taylor was at the time Lawrence Taylor played, he redefined the position.
He was the reason that people draft first round left tackles, basically.
Correct. So everything all stacked together, I would give LT maybe just a hair above that, because you're correct. As a right outside linebacker, he was the one that brought left tackle into play. He redefined that position.
Yeah.
Because linebackers up to that point were run stuffers, even outside linebackers, they were coverage guys. Lawrence Taylor turned he basically turned that right outside linebacker into the rush position.
Yeah.
And redefined what you had to look out for as an offense. And I'm not saying Aaron Donald doesn't do that, but I would say just maybe
Slightly
just
less.
a slight hair to LT over Donald, because their accolades look exactly the same, and Donald's still playing.
True.
He's still got an opportunity, even though he's, 30, whatever.
Yeah.
Still got an opportunity to win another defensive player of the year,
This is true.
add to his sack totals and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Man,
I never got to watch Lawrence Taylor. A lot of people that have obviously say that he's the best
he was a beast.
of all time.
It was
Even Lawrence Tayller made a good point. He's like, at the end of every best defensive player ever, my name is always at the end. So there's a reason for that, apparly. But man, Aaron Donald, I watched him and I've had to watch him 2 times a year, every single year. And he's nuts.
He is.
He's great.
And to your point,
And he's as big, he's as jacked as DK Metcalf, and he runs as fast. He's bigger than DK Metcalf. He's an athletic specimen.
Yeah, he's got 50 pounds on DK.
Yeah.
And could probably.
But he's as jacked, meaning he's not a big, large lineman.
No.
He's jacked.
No.
And he runs fast, and he's an athletic freak.
And that's the thing. They'll bounce him inside, they'll bounce him outside, they'll drop him into coverage. I mean, they do everything with him.
Yeah.
And when he's still playing on the inside, getting double, triple teamed, he's still pulling double-digit sacks for an interior lineman.
Yeah, he can do it all.
I mean, so yeah, I think you're 1A1 and 1A2, I think.
Yeah, not even 1A and 1B.
No,
but
they're 1A1 and 1A2 maybe. I don't know. It was really a great exercise looking up all the stuff that Donald does, because like you, I've watched Donald and I know how great he is. I just had LT put up on this pedestal, like might have been the best defensive player of all time, and then when I'm looking at Aaron Donald, I'm going, wow.
Yeah,
He's
different.
Stat for stat right across the board.
Yeah, it's true.
Son of a gun. And that's as an interior guy. So
yeah,
really, really good exercise looking that up.
Yeah, I'm sure that was fun. Last segment of the show before we wrap it up. mini games. We're gonna play mini games,
And I'm going to throw another teaser in there as well when we're done.
You're gonna do that?
I'm going to do that.
All right.
Yep.
I only got 3 for you today.
Ooh.
I made them a little bit easier this time.
Okay, yeah, because I sucked at them last time.
Well, I also made them incredibly hard last time, not realizing like I have the answers in front of me. So obviously, oh, this must be easy. So in NFL history, minimum 5 games played, there is only one player who has ever averaged over 100 receiving yards a game for their career in the playoffs.
Oh, in the playoffs. Wow.
In the playoffs. Who is that player?
In the playoffs. I'm going to go with the easy, obvious guess, and that's going to be Jerry Rice.
Believe it or not, that is not true.
Jerry Rice.
Jerry Rice might have almost, because he played so many playoff games, might have shot himself in the foot there in a little bit, because you have one game where you only got 30 yards for whatever reason. You have a down game and your average goes down. So this is an average of 100 yards per game in the playoffs.
Average of 100 yards in the playoffs.
Now, I'll give you a little hint. Maybe it's not a good hint, but I feel like this is maybe an obvious hint. One of the all-time greats.
Well, after Jerry Rice, you have Larry Fitzgerald.
You got it.
There you go.
One of the best to ever do it.
Oh, my God. And you know what? One of the classiest dudes. Loved watching that guy. And again, we get to play against him. We seem to get to play against all the all-time greats. Unfortunately, twice a year.
I'm gonna drop a little unfortunate bomb on you. I believe he was involved in some domestic violence problems at one point.
Was he really?
Don't quote me on that. Don't quote me on that. But what I read, what I saw online was like one of, it was like a poll of the, either the classiest or the best ever, or like some of the.
He was like a pillar of the community.
He won Walter Payton Man of the Year, I think, one year.
He's always involved in charities.
Now, don't quote me on it. I don't know any of the details about it. I don't want to talk bad about a guy that I don't know anything about his situation. So I'm not sure if it was like a Kareem Hunt type of thing where like it was kind of self-defense, vindicated.
Yeah,
it was self-defense, and they kind of cut him just because they wanted to save face.
Think about
I'm
it.
not sure. I'd have to do a little more research on it, but I'm not going to say anything definitively yet. But it was a rumor that I heard. Let's go to the next question. This one's a little harder, but you might be able to get one or two out of this. Bill Belichick has drafted more head coaches than 1,000-yard wide receivers in his career. Two head coaches and 1 wide receiver, meaning he drafted more players that ended up becoming head coaches than he did 1,000-yard receivers.
Oh,
can you name?
God, forget
can
that.
you name any of them?
All right, so he drafted 1,000-yard receiver.
Indeed, he did. Now, this again, I'm going to say it is a little tough because you got to know who he drafted. You can't he didn't draft Randy Moss, obviously, but like some of these other guys you might not be sure about. Did he draft, who did he draft? Who did he not draft? So that is a little tough, but
He had to have drafted Edelman. It's got to be Edelman.
You got that one. Edelman is the only wide receiver he ever drafted
that had 1,000
yards. Now, he drafted 2 players that became head coaches. I'm not sure if you'll be able to get these, but we'll see.
Oh gosh.
I like the others, I'll give you a little hint for one of them.
All right.
He's a current head coach.
He drafted somebody who is a current head coach. Wait, hold on. Wait, so Mike Vrabel's got to be somebody, right?
He did not draft. No,
They didn't draft Vrabel.
I don't know if he drafted Vrabel, but it's not. But that's not on the list.
No.
We'll have to look that up.
Who did Vrabel get drafted by? Who did he play for?
Not
before
sure.
The Patriots. I thought for sure it would have been Vrabel. Oh, okay.
Well, Vrabel was also an early Patriot, so I don't know. Maybe he was on that team before Belichick took over. Potentially, is that a possibility?
Yes, maybe.
So
all right. So who else are we talking about here? Let's see. Oh man.
Yeah, you're gonna really have to dig deep for this one.
Yeah,
for either of them.
I don't think we have enough time.
No, I don't have enough time.
Podcast.
All right, so the one you're gonna kick yourself over. I don't remember how you pronounce it. It's either I think it's Gerard Mayo.
Mayo, duh. He's the coach right now.
Just became the head coach of the
right
Patriots.
Now, duh.
And then Kevin O'Connell, who coached Minnesota. He drafted him. Never Never really heard of him as a coach or a player, but
you're right.
But I knew you probably were not going to get that one because that was a deep one.
Yeah, Mayo. I would have circled around quite a while
at some
before
point.
I came up to. Yeah, came up to it.
But I feel like you'd have got that at some point. You'd been like, oh God, of course.
Yeah,
I just saw this in the news.
Yeah, I forgot he just got hired like a month or two ago.
All right, last one. You want to do your thing yet, or you want to do it at the end?
No, we'll do it at the end.
Right.
It's a teaser.
All right. Who was the only QB drafted by the Broncos to win a playoff game? This is a funny one.
Yes.
And do you know it? Or you think you know it?
Drafted by the Broncos, so it's not Brock Osweiler, is it?
No, I don't know if did Osweiler get drafted by.
I don't know if he got drafted
Broncos?
by the Broncos or not.
I'm not sure.
So
Man, that would have been
it certainly
funny.
was not Elway because he got. There was sort of
They tossed around,
traded,
tossed
and
around in the draft,
Colts
right?
and whatever. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Gary Kubiak, to win a playoff game. So did he win? So did he win the playoff game with the Broncos?
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah,
he won it
the
with,
only QB drafted by the Broncos to win a playoff game with the Broncos.
Okay.
Yes.
Was it Jake the Snake?
Nope.
Was it? Oh gosh, the other guy that had the hot wife.
Nope.
Not him either. Who the heck?
Wait, who was the guy with the hot wife?
I can't think of his name right now.
Then it's not him.
All right. Who was it?
Tim Tebow.
Yeah, you're right.
Tim
You are
freaking Tebow
absolutely correct.
won a playoff game in the
Pittsburgh.
greatest fashion.
Yep.
One can win a
Walk-off
playoff game.
touchdown.
in.
Yep.
To who? Do you remember who he threw the pass to?
It was the guy who the really good guy who died.
DT. Demarius Thomas. Yeah. Rest in peace.
Yeah.
Amazing receiver. But yeah, freaking up the not up the seam. I believe it was a slant route
Yes,
or
it was-
or like something like that.
He beat the guy down the right sideline.
Yeah. No, I believe it was up the middle. We'll fact check that. But
check that, yeah.
I think he beat him up the middle and split the safeties.
It might have been.
Regardless, yeah, that was Tim Tebow. So let's wrap this up with your
teaser. You know what starts this week, right? On Thursday?
yes,
The Combine.
the combine.
So I think what we need to do, we want to check things out, maybe do a little research on the Combine and maybe have that as one of our topics for next week. So Thursday is defensive linemen and linebackers. Friday, defensive backs and tight ends.
Okay.
Saturday is the day, of course, they
Everyone
keep for
loves.
everybody.
Yep.
Quarterbacks, wide receivers, running backs.
Sure.
And then finally on Sunday, you got your offensive linemen, which, very few people watch at that point.
Yeah, but definitely don't sleep on the offensive lineman because you can get some really good guys coming out, and that's offensive line is a slept on position.
No
for sure.
doubt about it. But it doesn't have the it doesn't have the juicy
flair.
draw that
Like quarterback does.
Correct. So this year, as it turns out, a lot of the stud quarterbacks in college have opted not to go to the combine. They're going to just only work out and do their drills during their college pro day. Same with a lot of the wide receivers. Some of the running backs will be there. So even Saturday is not going to have all that much flair to it.
All right. Well, we'll see what happens. I definitely will have to do a little bit of research on some of the guys some of the studs in the combine. I want to watch some of the highlights and whatnot and see what's going on.
Sure. And if nothing else, you can pick up some 300-pound defensive lineman runs a 4.4. You're going to hear about it.
Oh yeah.
You know what
absolutely.
I mean?
So that's all we got for this episode. Read option with Tommy Touchdowns.
And Razorback Jack signing off.
All right. See you next time. Thanks for listening to the Read Option Podcast, hosted by Tommy Touchdowns and Razorback Jack, produced by me, Tommy Touchdowns. Remember to follow us on all our socials, including Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube, at the Read Option Pod.